Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and you can subscribe there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me on the JB Show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and on the Roundtable at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on RPN. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, please make sure to smush down that subscribe button. Please, pretty please, with sugar on top. And if you subscribe and click the link bell, I may promise you cookies. Maybe, maybe a nice tiramisu. Who knows? If I can give it through the camera. I just want to give a shout out to all my patrons on Coffee. Thank you so much for your additional support. And just know that I am deeply humbled and grateful for your support. I put all my patrons down here in the Chiron, as you can see below here. So thank you so much to all my patrons on Coffee as well. It is so good to see everybody here in the chat today. We have people in. Is that short for Georgia? It's check out Marcel Ernie. All right, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I got to remember and put that in my notes. Miguel, good to see you. Terry, hello, good to see you as well. Yo, 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 what's good? Robin, nice to have you as well. Am I blurry? Am I blurry now? How about now? Whatever, man. So good to see you as well. And yes, excuse me, adequate mutual aid in getting the word out. That's actually deeply important. That actually kind of goes in line with what I was talking in the poll that I had put before we live. Ursa, hello, nice to meet you. Welcome to the channel. Nice to have you in the chat as well. Bill Bradley, good to see you again. How are you? It's nice to see you, a familiar face in the chat. Adenga my bye. Good to see you as well. Yes, of course. Hello, fam. It's all nice to see you here. Let me see. Internet issue, out of focus, and stuttering video. That sucks. Hopefully, we can press on and things will improve over the next few minutes. Hopefully, try to get as many things off. Look, I have to change my things because uh, I live in an older condo. So as far as even having like the cable wires and the outlets, as well as having the phone lines, they're like out of commission. So I'm literally like every single time you guys I'm using Wi-Fi. I think that's part of the problem. And there's a lot going on in the living room. Plus, I have a family member staying with me right now, and they're sleeping on the couch. So it's kind of tough to get, utilize my living room. Plus, I don't have the Ethernet to USB. Well, I probably could. Well, no, there's a lot going on in the living room. It's just really tough. So I have to use what I got. So if I'm yeah, Robin, complicated logistics. So it's not as strong as I would like for it to be. Um, I mean the oh my god, I can't talk today. The signal is strong. It's just I guess I should have it connected to a heart line, but I'm broke. I'm just broke. I just what can I say? I mean, look, like I say, 90 to 95% of my disability check goes towards rent. Like I'm poor, people. So that's all I can say. I mean, I really don't have much else to. Good to see you, Sabs. Welcome. You're actually gonna get a great introduction to this channel. While I'm at, I'm just gonna turn my Wi-Fi off on my so that it kind of lowers the bandwidth on my phone too, because hopefully that'll help. You know, but what can you do? I mean, we all need things to get better in this country, and unfortunately, the way corporations and ISPs and uh, big pharma and big agriculture and the way they all operate, they make it so that you have to pay through the nose just to get a decent quality within this country. And it's sad, but that's the way it is. And it pisses me off because I ultimately just, want to be able to live a decent life. And it's just like, well, in order to do this, then you have to basically go broke. And so fortunately, that's the way it is. Needless to say, see, that's the thing. Here's the problem. I have an Ethernet cable. Well, I need the Ethernet to USB because there is no Ethernet port on my laptop, only USB. But even still, I would need one long enough to go from the living room to my bedroom, which means I would have to cross through the living room, down the hallway to my bedroom. And then on top of that, either if not that, I would have to take this into either the living room or the dining room. And it's kind of difficult because then I wouldn't be able to put up the ring light. It's a lot. It's just a lot. Um Hopefully I can try to figure out the logistics for the next day or so. It's just it's a lot. There's a lot going on in my house. And part of it's because it's just yeah. But beyond all that, it's good to see everybody here in the chat. And as you guys can see, I am, yeah, like, no, I don't have a home cable outlet in my room. The cable outlets in here are kaputs. The phone outlets in my house are kaputs. This place is older than me. We don't own it, and they won't come in and fix like the things that need to be fixed because yeah, they just won't do it. Um, Landlords, I tell you. And so, um, when you're broke, you have to deal with what you got. Yeah. Um, and I can't move the router into my bedroom because I don't have the cable wire that's in the wall on the opposite side of the house. So on the other side of the house, and that's the only cable wire going from outside to inside. So it's just, yeah, yeah. But s- yeah. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was because number one, it was a pretty successful stream last time, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Second thought, actually one of my favorite channels on YouTube. Um, and if you're not subscribed to him, I put the video link in the description. Go to his channel, give him a sub. He does really good condensed videos about different subjects, especially for those of us that are leftist. And he puts it in a very practical, real world ways so that people really get what he's talking about. But he acclimates to the news of the day, and I think he's actually a really good channel to follow. It's not deep complex, and it's not as comprehensive as our longer form discussions are, but it gives especially people who are not on the left a good synopsis of what different policies are, what different concepts are in a shorter form, and I think it's easy digestible. So I do recommend it, and so this is something that I actually want to convey to other people. But I like to react to his channels, to his content, because it's a really good stepping off point to talk about subjects as well. Um, so yeah, and thank you, Bill. When you broke, you have to make money. You have to make do. So true for an ever-growing number of people in this nation. Talk about a metaphor for the U.S. poor. Yeah. Uh, no. I see exactly what you're saying, and I appreciate it so much. But so let me share my screen really quick. And by the way, this is not going to be on the podcast form, um, because this is kind of like extra show. So I just wanted to do that for this. Um, so let me share my screen really quick. And the title of this video is Why Millions of Americans Are Quitting Their Jobs. Now, on RBM, when I spoke about things like this, I spoke about this a few times. And a lot of us on the left know as to why people are quitting their jobs. And as you saw from the thumbnail, a lot of people say, well, nobody wants to work. Oh, these people, they're so lazy, they just don't want to work. And I could give you a comprehensive answer on that, but I also want to see what second thought actually has to say on this. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be based. So because like 99% of all his videos are based, there's only one where I was kind of like, meh. But other than that, like 99% of his videos have been spot on. Like he's been like shooting threes like nonstop. So I'm gonna play the first part. And by the way, I did not see this video yet. I purposefully did not watch because I want to get my natural reactions to what he says. So if you guys are seeing this for the second time, well then you guys know what to expect. If you guys are just seeing this fresh like I am, and guess what? You guys are gonna see this just like me. So let's go. Let me make this large and
this episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. In some other news, if you haven't heard already, I recently started a podcast with Hakeem and Ugopnik. It's called The Deprogram, and it's dedicated to helping listeners shake off the capitalist programming we've all been addicted to over the years. We tackle all sorts of topics, from theory to current events to culture, and just generally have a good time. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, be sure to check it out by following the link below. Show of hands, how many of you are watching this at work? If you are, good for you. Steal back some of that time. But as this episode will explain, there's an increasing likelihood that you're not watching this at work. Because you told your boss to pound sand, changed all the work displays to Big Chungus, and pulled the fire alarm on your way out, never to return. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the recent massive wave of resignations, why it's happening, and the state of the US labor market as a whole. Okay, time for a quick refresher in case any of you were off the grid for the last couple years. If you were, lucky you. In early 2020, we got a new plague. Things got bad pretty quickly, and countries around the world developed their own strategies for overcoming this viral challenge. Some countries chose to do it the right way. Lockdowns, mass testing, common sense precautions, delivering food and supplies to people, and so on. Others decided to sacrifice their population on the altar of capitalism so that a handful of ultra-rich vampires could buy a smaller yacht to ferry them to and from their mega yacht. I'm not joking. For the next 2 years, American workers were put through the ringer. Were called essential workers, applauded, and thanked profusely for their service. Unfortunately, applause and boats doing donuts do not inoculate essential workers against a deadly virus. And
Yo, peep this. If you're doing a job that involves some danger, that's kind of outside of the purview of what your job description is, how good is this? What good is that going to do for you? What good is this? How is it helping you? What? Like what? I get appreciation, and that's fine. But how are you going to show your appreciation when it's like this doesn't measure up to the needs of people who are essentially risking their life for the survival of all the people of this nation? Let's continue.
as a result of being required to work to survive, hundreds of thousands of them did not. The stress of working in these conditions was overwhelming, and millions of Americans decided they were not going to die for their bosses. Resignations went through the roof, far exceeding any numbers on record. Then, when the CDC flipped a switch and made COVID not bad anymore because corporations got grumpy, those same workers were cast aside and derided as low skill, despite being literally the only thing keeping the economy running during the pandemic. As you might have...
So apparently, when we were risking our lives for the sake of capitalism, we were, essential labor, right? Essential workers. But because we're like, you know what, screw you and your job, because you guys are trying to make us risk our lives for the sake of capitalism, now we're low skill laborers. We're somebody that's not worthy of the day, right? It's crazy, right? How they flip the switch when we actually want what we deserve. Isn't that funny? Yeah, Janice. It says, or thank you for showing up to work. Better to give hazard pay. Right? Like, right? Weird.
Imagine, people were shocked and upset at this abrupt change, and the resignations continued. 2 years, or in American terms, nearly 1 million lives from the start of the pandemic, and we're currently seeing an average of nearly 4,000 COVID deaths a day in the United States. A 9/11's worth of deaths every single day, and our government is pretending it's not happening, that the pandemic is over, that everything is back to normal. More and more Americans are coming to grips with the fact that this is not the case, and that our leaders have chosen the almighty economy over the lives of our friends, our family, and our co-workers. So that brings us up to speed. Depressed yet? Hang in there. I've got some concrete suggestions at the end.
Are you kidding me right now?
Provide online job training.
Oh my God. Capitalism. I tell you. Dear God.
Now, it's pretty obvious that working during a pandemic can lead to some suboptimal conditions, and it makes perfect sense that many people would rather quit than risk dying. But resignation numbers have been steadily increasing for a long time. In fact, with just one exception during the Great Recession, Resignation rates have been on the rise for the entire 20 years it's been tracked.
I love how they call it the Great Resignation, right? It's like, yeah, because people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And with the onset of many different shows, independent media, what have you, talking about what they do in other countries. Because I was watching some TikTok videos, and I think the TikTok video was entitled Americans Living Abroad. How has America like kind of messed you up? And so many people were talking about either healthcare or just a mindset that people have. Like one lady, like even when it comes down to the mindset, one lady was like, she was scared to let her 11-year-old play outside by himself in Germany because she's from here and she's afraid that something bad will happen to him. But she could do that with her kid in Germany because things like that aren't as prevalent. So that kid basically in Germany is growing up the way I grew up back in the 80s and early 90s. And it's crazy because, you can talk about healthcare, you can talk about the sick leave, you can talk about the paternity leave, you can talk about all these different things. It opened our eyes. We were just like, wait a minute. How in the hell are people not living in America, living the American dream more than Americans living in America? How is that? How in the world are they constantly telling us that we're free in this country, and yet they have the same freedom, but they also have more opportunity and better outcomes? How in the hell is that? And then you get to the point to realize that America is not the greatest country in the world. I dare even say America's not even a great country. Watch people come at me in the comments. If you disagree, put it in the comments. But as far as size, yeah, great in size. But as far as good things, that's the jury's still out on that one, and it's not looking good. So, Bill says a better answer to the pandemic would have been universal health care and a monthly check to stay home. Instead, we got the opposite. Exactly. Lots of people got sanctioned by the COVID measures. Learn alternate means just like Cuba. But Terry says, but they don't have money for that, while children and elderly and disabled are hungry and homeless. Oh, yeah, that's right. I gotta reapply for my food stamps after the stream, by the way. Fun times, huh? Yeah. And Bill says, in the 60s, one blue-collar income made a whole household middle class without a lot of debt. In 2022, two incomes, both college educated, and a ton of debt to be middle class. And even then, they're still struggling. That's what's so messed up. And Bill continues, they're not even as comfortable as they would have been led to believe either. Absolutely. So let's continue.
Why is that? The obvious answer, and the one you've no doubt heard on this channel before, is that work is simply getting worse in every conceivable way. Wages have stagnated and are nowhere close to keeping up with inflation or the skyrocketing cost of living. Vacation days and sick days are a thing of the past. Parental leave is non-existent. Pensions have vanished. You're expected to be on call at all hours. Your manager can text you on your day off and demand you come in and cover the shift of a sick coworker. Even the fabled upward mobility once you're hired is no longer possible in scenarios. This is all stuff that our parents and grandparents took for granted. And as the disease of capitalism has progressed into its later stages, those job benefits have been consumed by the never-ending search for greater corporate profits. The job market today is nothing like it was in, say, 2000. And if the older people lambasting the youth for their laziness and entitlement would just take a few days and apply for a handful of jobs online, I think they'd realize just how different everything is from when they were in their working years. But there's another aspect of work under capitalism that is equally important to understand. Let's talk about alienation. In the not-so-distant past, human beings, at least a portion of the population, had relative autonomy and control of their lives. Merchants and craftspeople owned what are called the means of production. The carpenter had control of his woodworking process from beginning to end. He made his own furniture, and he owned the finished product until he sold it to someone else. The bootmaker made a pair of boots, and they were his. The product of his labor belonged to him. As capitalism developed, this began to change. Factories were built, and they needed labor. As poor workers flocked to the cities from the countryside, they took their places along the production chain, and in exchange for a wage, they traded their autonomy, their agency, and became just one cog in a much larger machine, fracturing the work that used to be done by one person or a small team into many different hyper-specialized pieces so that now, no single worker could say they were a bootmaker or a furniture maker. They just did one small thing, day in and day out. In this new arrangement, a tiny handful of people, the capitalists, owned the means of production, or the means by which goods were produced. The workers, without the means of production, were left with only one thing to sell: their own labor. That same arrangement persists to this day, and the psychological effects are the same. Workers become alienated from themselves and their own autonomy, dignity, from their fellow human beings, and from the product of their labor. Let's take a quick look at all three. First, alienation from the self. When you go to work for the capitalist, when you surrender your autonomy and become a cog in their machine, you experience a distinct loss of control over your own destiny and sense of self.
Isn't that interesting? Like wow. Like, you think about it. A lot of times back in the day, people would identify themselves by their profession. It's like how I don't necessarily believe that you should identify by your profession necessarily. I mean, unless, for instance, there are some people who still do that, but it depends on the profession. Like, if I'm a server at Chipotle, I people don't know me as a server at Chipotle. People know me by who I am, but I don't identify as that. But if somebody's a physician, they're identified as doctor, right? If they're a professor with a doctorate, you're presented as doctor. If you're a lawyer, when you sign your name, it's Esquire, right? People typically these days, average workers, which a carpenter, a mason, a shoemaker, a welder, a plumber, they don't really go by a title or anything like that. So their identity is no longer tied to that profession. And typically, um, when you have that job, it's it's just a job. It's not something that you necessarily can do from the raw materials unto the finished product. So therefore, being able to, build something is not really within you because you don't have that skill. Okay, thank you. I got that. It didn't go, ain't my baby. Okay. But yeah, so it's just that's the thing. A lot of times people don't really think about. Lots of people's last names for profession are carpenter, miller. Some people have last names that use to reflect their family trade. One of my ancestors was also had the name lawyer. Why? Because they wanted them to become a lawyer. So they named him lawyer. So this is true, especially in my family. Yeah. Professor Kaczynski mentions the alienation that comes from a loss of autonomy. Folks are going berserk. Yeah, that's true. All right, let me continue. Let me mute my mic.
The things you produce are no longer an act of self-expression, as a fine pair of boots was to the bootmaker, but rather an endlessly repeated task that is dictated to you by someone else. For the vast majority of people, your job has nothing whatsoever to do with your goals, your desires, what you want to do with your life. It's simply a way to make sure you don't starve, that you can keep a roof over your head and pay your bills. In a sense, this alienation from the self reduces human beings to little more than animals, acting.
What's your dream job? What do you dream of doing? And when you work jobs like this, it's just like dream job. I'm just trying to make it to the weekend so I can actually live, right? It's just like the phrase that's been going around on TikTok. Darling, I don't dream of labor. Well, no, neither do I.
Only out of the direct need for self-preservation, that very most basic need.
Hurricane season runs from June 1 until November 30th.
Alienation from other people and society at large. Once you accept the capitalist conception of society, the traditional and moral view of other human beings as friends and community is destroyed. Each other person becomes a threat, a challenge to be overcome. What if they take your job? What if they get the promotion and you don't? What if they're willing to work for less money? This fear, caused entirely by a system that pits humans against one another for advancement and even mere survival, causes intense feelings of separation, of being apart from other human beings. And for far too many people, it becomes accepted as normal, as the way things are. Third, alienation from the product of your labor. In a capital
I actually want to go back to that because you're constantly trying to compete. Do humans have a bit of a competitive nature to us? Yeah, a little bit. But what about our cooperative nature? What about our collaborative nature? It's never really bolstered within our society because it's always you versus him instead of you teaming up with him or you teaming up with her or you teaming up with them. It's never, let's collaborate, let's make something better because I have to get over on you in order so that I can survive. And instead of it being more of a symbiotic relationship between people, it's more of a predator and prey type of relationship that's encouraged in our society. And so this is one of the this is the crabs in the bucket mentality that is constantly being perpetuated in our society today. It's always I gotta do better than this person in some way, shape, or form instead of collaborating with them. And this even look, people even talk about, like, even in their insults, I make more money than you. I'm better than you. This actually goes into individualism, right? Like, it's crazy. People are, like, literally trying to compete each other just to survive, when really our survival would turn into thriving if we cooperated and collaborated. But instead, they try to against one another, even against people who aren't even from this country. Because once they come in, it's like, oh, they're taking your jobs away from you. When it's not even true. Like, no, you're taking the labor and shipping it off to a place that we can't access it anymore. So who's really the enemy? Is it the person that is basically, desperate and they have to survive and they move here? And they don't even have to be desperate. Let's be real. Just because a person migrates here doesn't mean that they have to be desperate. They can move here if they want, because guess what? They live on this planet. So just because we have some imaginary line that says it's a border doesn't necessarily make it true. Look, if an iguana or a deer marches from the Mexican border up to the United States border, do they even care? Do they even know that it's a border there? Why do we have to obey that same premise? But the crazy part is, people would blame other people who are trying to just find work or find a better life, and try to make it seem like that they're evil just because they want to have a better life. And you continuously blame the powerless instead of going after the powerful. And the powerful are only powerful because we give them that power, because we literally work in their factories in order to make them more powerful. Let's continue, shall we?
Capitalist society causes intense feelings of separation, of being apart from other human beings. And for far too many people, it becomes accepted as normal, as the way things are. Third, alienation from the product of your labor. In a capitalist society, 99% of the population, what you produce does not belong to you. You sell your labor in exchange for a wage, and whatever you produce during the hours you've sold becomes the property of the capitalist. That property is then sold, netting the capitalist a healthy profit. In stark contrast to workers owning the means of production, the bootmaker, for example, the products workers produce under capitalism do not benefit the worker at all. In fact, they become yet another challenge to overcome. Whereas the bootmaker can make a pair of boots, and then they are his to do with whatever he likes, wear them or sell them, workers in a factory may produce 100 TVs a day and own none of them. They would have to pay the money they receive in their wage to buy the very thing that they have produced with their labor.
Y'all need to subscribe to that channel. Y'all really, really need to. Like, for real. That makes so much sense. Right? You help build that product. And then if you need that product, right, that you help build, you literally have to take the money that you helped build it in order to buy that product that you just built, even though you built it. It's crazy, right? Damn, I keep breaking up. Damn it. Sorry about that. But think about it. You literally are producing these things for them. And people will say, well, they have to buy the raw materials. Yeah, and who they get the raw materials from? The people who literally extract the raw materials. Who's to say that they can't just take it themselves and then build something else with it? And because they have to go by this contract, they can't own any of that production, even though their labor literally contributes to the functionality of that company. It's crazy how you have someone that produces profit for you and you don't partake in any of that profit whatsoever. And I don't want anybody coming here and go, oh, but JB, part of the profit is their wage. No, it's not. That is expense costs. That's what's it called? Gosh, what's the business word for it? That's operations costs. That's just the cost of doing business. Damn. Wow. Shit. Is it that bad? I don't want to end the stream that early. I want to finish this video first. All right, so I'm gonna finish this video as fast as possible so that I won't subject you guys to me breaking up and stuff like that. I hate this. God, I hate. I think part of it is because I'm playing a video while I'm recording. So hopefully it'll once it's finished and I'll be more smoother. So it's mostly fine. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Let's continue. Let me mute my mic.
That's alienation in a nutshell, and it's an essential feature of capitalism. It also goes a long way towards explaining why so many people are miserable in their jobs. In a time when simply going to work could mean dying, when your existing economic precarity is made worse by a global pandemic, and when billionaires become even more massively wealthy as a million of your fellow human beings die, it should be very clear why so many Americans are leaving their jobs. They're beginning to understand the problem. Let's take a look at some numbers. In November...
Hold up. Look at that. Buffett, Gates, and Munger, and they're basically debating socialism versus capitalism, and you do not have one socialist. Wait, who is Munger? Let me look this dude up. He better be a socialist, because if not, that's some bullshit. American investor. Yeah, he ain't no socialist. Is a billionaire investor. Yeah, fuck that guy. Okay, so, check this out. You have three capitalists right there, and they're debating socialism without one socialist even on the panel. Here's the crazy part. people who watch mainstream media, they're never on your side. Just get that out of the way. Because they will push you towards capitalism every single time. And guess what? They have people who are representative of capitalism, the successful parts of capitalism, but yet they never put in somebody who's on the opposite side, which is a socialist. Because they don't want you to know about it. They don't want you to know the benefits of anything other than capitalism. Not one socialist, not one Marxist, not one Leninist, not one communist. Nobody. They don't have them up there. Why? They don't have somebody that actually argues for the other side. And they want you to look at them like they're gods. Mind you, shout out to Savvy Sabs, because these aren't even the highest people on the rung. The highest people on the rung are the people who are the owners of the central banks. Those are the highest people on the rungs. And then you have the bankers. They're like the third people in the tier. But yet they want you to look at them and revere them like gods. And no, screw Google. Look, they will never bring any socialists to discuss capitalism. And you know what the crazy part is? Socialists understand capitalism better than capitalists do. Weird, right? Communists understand capitalism better than capitalists do. Marxists and Leninists understand capitalism better than capitalists do. Because every single time something happens bad in capitalism, it's blamed on communism and socialism, even though it's happening in a capitalist country. Make that make sense. Should I keep going? Yeah.
December of 2021, 4.5 million Americans quit their jobs. That is an enormous figure. A few months prior, in August, 4.3 million quit. Across the entirety of 2021, an average of 3.95 million workers quit every month. According to one poll, over half of Americans are looking for a new job or simply want to leave their current one. That's not a blip. That is the beginning of something very big. The media.
Something very big, yes. And I'm so excited about it because people are actually waking up. And this is the good thing. I want you guys to realize people, they're waking up and they're realizing something that they should have known long ago because of the brainwashing. I don't try to use the word propaganda anymore because number one, it's such a complex word, and I like to keep things simple. Number two, look, I'm a regular person. I'm not even college educated, so you guys, take it with it whether you will. So guess what? Let's be real and let's call a thing. It's brainwashing. And they're brainwashing you into thinking that you have to work for these low-ass wages and not own the means of production in order to survive, which is complete and utter bullshit, and we're actually waking up to it, and I'm very happy about this. It's true.
Is calling it the Great Resignation, and the New York Times, finger on the pulse as always, compared the trend to a virus, calling it a quitagion, and postulating how companies could inoculate themselves from this horrible illness. It's pretty telling that when American workers begin to show the slightest glimmer of class consciousness, the paper of note comes out crying that these normal, hardworking people are a disease to be protected against. That should tell you something about where the interests of this country lie. Doing in response to this surge of resignations? Well, they're obviously complaining like they always do. No one wants to work anymore, labor shortage. but common sense would have you believe that the logic of the free market would force these companies to compete, right? To offer.
Well, if you want things to get better, then go and get a new job. Capitalism emboldens competition. So if you want capitalism to do better, then have more competition. Right? Okay, so guess what? I'm going to go and quit and look and get something better. Oh no, not like that, not like that. But competition. But the free market. It's funny how the free market always works for products, but it never actually works for labor. Until labor actually treats it like a free market. And then we start to go, you know what? You guys aren't paying enough. So I'm going to hold out, or I'm going to go someplace else that gives me better. And then you guys get pissed off when we actually apply your free market principles to actual real life according to our labor. Oh, I think we just found a flaw in capitalism. For real? For real, for real. It's a labor shortage. No, it's not a labor shortage. In fact, there's a shit ton of people out there that are ready to work if you pay them enough. All you gotta do is just pay them a living wage, pay them a thriving wage, give them the benefits they deserve, maybe even a little universal health care, or maybe even a little paid family leave, or mandatory vacations by law. Maybe even a little owning the means of production. Maybe. But we can't do that. That's socialism. We can't do that. Socialism. What does Scar say to the hyenas in Lion King? Precisely. Shall we move on? Let's go.
For the best incentives in order to win over potential employees. As socialists have been trying to explain for well over a century, the logic of capitalism is exploitation, plain and simple. Extract as much value as possible by whatever means necessary. Offering
Ta-da!
benefits cuts into the bottom line. It's not immediately profitable in the short term, even though it would clearly increase hiring and retention. Their solution in this scenario? Bring back child labor. If adults won't work, let's press their kids into service. Multi-billion-dollar companies like McDonald's are now offering reduced pay positions for 14 and 15-year-olds. And
I'll be damned if I ever have a 14 or 15-year-old that ends up going to work for any one of these leeches that they like to call corporations. My kid is going to be a kid until it's time for them not to be a kid anymore. So what? So you can overwork my kid just so that you can produce more profit? No. No. GTFO. H. Yeah. No way. You get a clothing allowance in China? Wait. Time out. Hold up. Wait a minute. Hold up. Beep. Back up the truck. You get a clothing allowance? A clothing allowance. Wait. Stop the press. I never get clothing. It's like, dude, like the last time I got a massive amount of clothes was when I was living in an apartment and somebody threw out a bag of clean, freshly washed clothes into right next to the dumpster. And I went out and I grabbed that bag and brought it in, and it was all my size. A clothing allowance. Man, this country got me fucked up. Let me tell you something. Holy, what in the world? All right, we're gonna talk about that a little bit afterwards on the other side, cause that's new news to me. I'm gonna have to get Denny Haifong on this and talk about that, cause that's some crazy shit. I mean, crazy in a good way, but that's some crazy shit.
And trucking companies are flirting with the idea of allowing teenage drivers. To capitalists, it's the perfect plan. You get a cog in your machine for cheaper than you could before, and your new workers are even less likely to understand they're being exploited because they're literal children. Okay, before we get to the solutions, let's take a look at one last problem. A few months ago, CNBC put out a video on this same topic, and in that video, they suggested there are 3 ways to improve your work life. Individually talking to your manager about why you're not enjoying work, starting a side hustle, or looking for a new job. Here's the problem. None of those things will improve your work life. Complaining to your manager alone, you're fired, easily replaced by another desperate worker. Taking on a side hustle, you'll just end up even more burned out than before. Plus the fact that side hustle in the year of our Lord 2022 just means selling your soul to any number of gig economy scams, where you're not only paid peanuts for running yourself and your car into the ground, but you get even less protection and stability than in your current garbage job. Their third solution is simply to find another job. That seems to be the route most people are taking, but here's the issue. Low wages, unsafe working conditions, and a complete lack of benefits are par for the course across the entire US labor landscape. Odds are, whatever job you find will put you right back in that terrible position. This framing is a huge problem. Just like everything under capitalism, your choices are reduced to individual responsibility. Want to solve climate change? Buy more paper straws. Want a more representative government? Just get out there and vote harder. So it shouldn't be a surprise that a capitalist mainstream news network presents your options in this intentionally limited way. But you guys are smart. You can tell that CNBC very obviously left out the only real solution to immediately improve your work experience. Well, the only one I can openly advocate for on YouTube: unionization. And fortunately, it looks like the American people as a whole are starting to catch on. The pandemic has raised the consciousness of countless Americans, with more and more workers becoming fed up with being exploited and worked to death for next to nothing. But are you ready for some really good news? In January of this year, we officially doubled the number of union certification elections filed in 2021. That is really promising. Much of this new union activity is driven by Starbucks workers. Just weeks after the first corporate Starbucks store unionized in Buffalo, New York, 54 more stores in 19 states have filed for their own union elections.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it right now. I think I found the single biggest productivity hack of 2021. It's this Google Chrome extension called Speed.
Starbucks.
So that's some promising news. I mean, look, that's on the way to workers trying to own the means of production. It's not exactly where I would like for it to be, but look, I'm not trying to resuscitate capitalism in any way, and I don't want to save it. And I'm not trying to make America into a social democracy because I actually want it further than that. I actually want America to be a socialist country. Social democracy is just a capitalist nation that gives its workers a little bit better. That's basically all it is. But yeah, it still has imperialism and all that bullshit. So guess what? I'm not interested in social democracy. But I will say that it is on the right track. But we're just we're trying to burn capitalism with fire, and I think the United States is the prime target that should we should get rid of capitalism in this country, so that it bleeds out into the rest of the world, so that we don't have it anymore. Bill says Starbucks is pissed too. They fired the union organizers in one of the stores. Maybe not sure if it was the original Buffalo store or not. And look. Let them cry. Let them be pissed. Because honestly, people are just trying to do better. And I say, to me, unions isn't even a floor. That's the basement. I'm at that point right now. But at least we're somewhere in the house. But I'm done with crumbs. But I'm happy for them. I am.
like other massive corporations, has gone on the record to say that they don't need a union. It'll just get in the way of running a smooth operation and make things harder for the workers. We're all just one big happy team anyway. Do you really want to bring on a union and make us sad? Won't you think of your executives' feelings? Of course, this is just a slimy union busting tactic. These companies are desperate not to have to deal with unionization, because unions, unlike individual workers, actually have bargaining power. Ask any union worker what happened after their store unionized. Depending on the industry, it's not unheard of to see wages double after unionization. It's no wonder corporations don't want it to happen, because that will cut into their unconscionable tens of millions of dollars in executive salaries. Those executives don't produce value. Their workers do. And with a union, those workers can get more of the money they deserve and far better treatment than what they're suffering without union representation. You've probably all seen this meme. It's funny, but it's at least partly accurate. Alone, and with the mindset induced by life under capitalism, you are powerless. You will never gain an inch of ground against corporate interests. But with collective action, you can hit them where it hurts, right in the wallet. Now, I said I'd have concrete actions for you to take, and I do. Here's how you can help raise class consciousness and revitalize the American labor movement. First, if you are currently employed and your job isn't unionized, you can reach out to established organizations like the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World. They've got a form on their website where you can provide a little info and get in touch with expert organizers who can help you unionize your workplace. If you're not employed, or if your job is unionized, you can still help this process by handing out pamphlets or other information in the stores you visit. Just be subtle about it. You don't want to get the employees in trouble. The IWW has a variety of documents you can print out and distribute to those who would like to learn more about what it means to be part of a union. And the IWW isn't the only one. Plenty of industries have specific unions for workers in that field. A quick search online will get you the info relevant to you or your area. You don't have to limit your agitating to your local stores either. You can distribute literature and resources online. Anywhere there are disgruntled workers, there's room for you to make a positive difference. For those who have a knack for the visual arts, consider making flyers for your local organizing groups, unions, or Socialist Party chapters. If you have a social media presence, use your voice to help educate people and raise class consciousness. It may all be old news to you, but there are so many people out there who have never heard this stuff. And if you can make an impact on one person, they may go on to win over other people. It's a collective effort, and we all have a role to play. Millions of workers are quitting their jobs, but if we don't seize the day and help explain why work under capitalism is terrible, this new movement will fizzle out. Because people still have to feed their families, and labor under capitalism is the only game in town. It is our responsibility as organizers, educators, and decent human beings to help our fellow workers understand the root cause of their problems, and to work towards a future where the means of production are controlled by the many, not the few. Building this new labor movement is a step in the right direction. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind of content is made possible by my patrons on Patreon. Thanks to viewers like you.
Make sure to subscribe to him. Make sure to subscribe. Bill says, syndicalism, as I understand it, all workers united, ultimate collective bargaining power. Sounds like a good thing. I definitely would say. Let's look up the definition. And let's show it. Show our work, people. Show our work. All right. Quick Google search. Syndicalism. A movement for transferring the ownership and control of the means of production and distribution to workers' unions. Influenced by Proudhon and by the French social philosopher Georges Sorel, syndicalism developed in the French labor unions during the late 19th century and was at its most vigorous between 1900 and 1914, particularly in France, Italy, Spain, and the United States. Thank you so much for that. Sounds good to me. And yes, Egg64, if we had unions, so many workers would still be alive today. And that's true. There would be a lot. If they own the means of production, even more will be alive today. Because a lot of times, a lot of them, look, the leadership in unions have some of them have they kind of have a wink and a nod from capitalists. And so for unions, you have to be careful because, you get the capitalists, they get in there and then they start promising them things and trying to grease their palms. And the next thing you know, it becomes a political issue. This is one of the reasons why I say workers owning the means of production, like in worker co-ops, that's something that's more preferable. Because it's basically, instead of being union ran, it's essentially union owned. And so that's one of the reasons why I prefer workers owning the means of production, which is kind of in the same vein as I think what Bill Bradley's actually talking about syndicalism. So and correct me if I'm wrong, if on that, but Ilhanar says our government was so long ago before a lot of us were born. It's another uphill fight for citizens again under our capitalistic system. Oh joy. You're correct. Screw Google says most I've ever worked was 12 on 12 off with no weekends for 6 months. Yeah, I think the most hours I ever worked, and I actually put this out on Twitter. I asked people what's the longest hours that they've worked, some crazy ass hours. but the most hours I worked in a day was 21 hours. I went in at 11 p.m. that night and I didn't get off of work until 7 p.m. the next day. And I only did 15-minute breaks. I never took off for a half-hour break. Was it worth the money? Hell no. It was not worth it. Because number one, I wasn't really making that much per hour. I wasn't given a living wage, number one. And number two, working that much, I literally got sick the week afterwards because my body was just that messed up. And I agree, Terry. Let's keep it real. Union leaders sell it all the time. Unfortunately, I see that. And not all of them. There are some who are, loyal to the workers and they want to, do as much as they can for their fellow workers, which is, I agree with. But unfortunately, there's, because look at what Starbucks is doing. They're trying to prevent a union from forming. The next step after that is if a union does form with Starbucks, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go after the union leaders next. They're going to get the union leaders and then try to grease their palms so that they are essentially turned from being union leaders to HR managers. And despite the name of human resources, HR, that department, and I actually spoke to somebody who has a background in HR. HR is for the corporation. They're not there for you. And so they try to turn union leaders into HR while still being in the union so that it can benefit the corporation and not the workers. So that's what Starbucks is going to do. And that's what a lot of companies have successfully done. And so if you get a lot of people who are in a union, they go, man, the union reps, they don't do nothing. That's because they have been compromised. This is why, I think that the unions should be owning the means of production, not just collectively bargaining. So what about HR is to protect the corporation from civil lawsuits? That's the entire purpose. Yeah. So let's take a look at what some other things have been said. And by the way, once again, the link to that video that I showed throughout this stream is in the description. So please make sure to go there and as well subscribe to Second Thought. Shout out to Kasim Rashad. This tweet went viral. Chipotle, 26% profit increase, raising prices. They raised their prices despite a 26% profit increase. Starbucks, what we just talked about, 31% profit increase, and they have just raised their prices. Despite raising their prices, McDonald's has had a 59% profit increase. Shell, Mobil, and BP, 60% profit increase, and they are raising their prices. He says there is not a labor shortage. This isn't inflation. It is 100% corporate greed. They have been raising their prices because their eyes are bigger than their stomachs. They are greedy bastards, and that's all it really is. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't just take my word for it. And don't just take Kasim Rashad's word for it. Okay, this is from Business Insider. Let's look at the headline. Says companies are pocketing their fattest profits in more than 70 years, even as they complain about inflation. Or Nobody wants to work anymore. Oh, nobody wants to work anymore. Meanwhile, they're getting all that money in. They're just like, I'm gonna take all this money in. I haven't seen this much pork since a police union. Golly. They're talking about, oh, it's bad because, nobody wants to work. In other words, businesses are inflating already inflated prices in order to turn a bigger profit amid people's fears over uncertain times. What's making that uncertainty? People are sick and tired of being sick and tired. So they're like, we're going to raise our prices. Quote, gas companies are paying less and making a lot more, and they do not seem to be passing that on to the consumers at the pump, Biden said. Instead, companies are pocketing the difference as profit. That is unacceptable. Yeah. He's in their pockets. Let me see. Even after peaking in the 1990s, corporate profit margins were roughly half of what they are today. Companies have been able to grow those margins to what they are today, in part by paying workers a smaller share of what they produce. Morgan Stanley researchers write that the widening gap between company profits and worker compensation since the 1990s is unprecedented and poses a threat to the health of the economy. Reducing that gap, they write, would be the key to unwinding the current inflationary cycle. They are screwing us over in 4K. That's exactly what they're doing. Screwing us over in 4K right in front of our faces. And we're saying, oh, hell no. And now they're putting out signs on their doors saying, nobody wants to work anymore. It's a bunch of BS. Because here's the funny thing, and everybody talks about people like socialists like me and the other different leftists, and they're like, oh, you guys just want shit for free. No, actually, we want actually to get paid for the labor that we actually produce. In fact, what is the symbol for communists typically? A hammer and sickle. What is that? What does that denote? That denotes working. They just want to get paid proper compensation. Socialists want to get paid proper compensation. We want to make from our labor the profits for our labor. And yet people go, well, you guys, they're like, if you guys want to make more money, then you guys should start investing. With what money? With what money? They'll say, oh, stop drinking Starbucks and stop eating avocado toast. You stop drinking Starbucks. You stop eating avocado toast. You start learning to code. Because guess what? All that money that you guys have at the top is our money. It's not your money, it's our money. Because without us, you wouldn't have it. You stole it. That's what the real deal is. This is why independent media is so important. Because we got to let people know that what's really going on. Because people are really sitting there going, oh man, I just got to hustle more in order to be able to do better. Peep the game, people. Do you know why you have to go out and hustle more now than you did a few years ago? It's because the people at the top are making the game even harder. They're rigging the system against you so that you have to go out there and hustle more. And then guess what they do? They'll say, oh, well, I hustle and I got all this money. And so guess what? You guys can do the same thing too. Wrong. You can't do the same thing. But then they'll go, buy my book or subscribe to my YouTube channel or subscribe to my website and pay this money per month so that you can do the same thing too. And they'll tell you bullshit like, oh, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning just so that you can make more money. That's the millionaire mindset. Or they'll tell you, oh, all you got to do is read these books every single morning. That's the millionaire mindset. Without telling you that they exploited their way to get there. Most people aren't millionaires because most people do not want to exploit people for their labor. That's why most people aren't millionaires. It's not because they're lazy. Most people are hardworking people. It's just they're constantly being screwed by the system. To answer your question, no, they don't. They don't. Because if they really did, then they'd be out there in the trenches with us. They believe somehow they're better than the rest of everybody and that they paid their dues and then anybody else is just lazy. It's like, no, they're not just lazy. The system is rigged against them. And you were willing to do some inhumane shit to get to the top. I'm going to repeat myself. They were willing to do some inhumane shit to get to the top. They don't want to hear that. And they'll talk about, oh, capitalism has been so good for the world. It's brought people out of poverty and blah, blah, blah. If it's so good, then why are people still in poverty? People are like, oh, it's not crony capitalism. It's not capitalism. It's crony capitalism. Capitalism is capitalism. I don't care if it's white capitalism. I don't care if it's black capitalism. I don't care if it's gay capitalism. Capitalism is capitalism, right? I don't care if the Kool-Aid is purple, red, green, or blue. It's still Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid is Kool-Aid. Why are we going to try to put a name on it to make it seem like, oh, it's just a perverted version of what it is, when really it's a fulfilled version of what it is? We are literally seeing capitalism's fulfillment. What does a cancer do? A cancer grows and grows and grows until it fully encompasses its host, and it completely destroys not only its host, but itself, because it can't survive without the host. What is capitalism doing? It continues to grow and grow. It demands infinite growth on a finite planet with finite resources until it completely consumes the planet. And guess what? Everybody dies. We're seeing the symptoms of it right now. Just like you start to see symptoms in somebody that has cancer and a tumor within them, you start seeing symptoms in their body. We're seeing symptoms on this planet. Look at what's going on with climate change. That's a symptom of capitalism. People are dying because they don't have health care. That's a symptom of capitalism. Our oceans are becoming more acidic. Symptom of capitalism. And people want to go, oh, well, that's just the way, it just is what it is. No. Mm-mm. And then people go, well, people are they're just greedy by nature and selfish. Then why in the hell are we allowing to keep a system in place that exacerbates those negative qualities? Why do we allow it then? wouldn't it be better to have a system that actually discourages greed and selfishness? So you agree that this system thrives on greed and selfishness. So therefore, what in the world is the point of keeping this system in the first place? If we know that it's doing bad things and killing us, why are we just shrugging our shoulders and saying, let's just keep it going? What kind of sociopathic bullshit is that? Also, while we're at it, can you not think of a system outside of capitalism? I think you're brainwashed because if you can't think of a system outside of it, then, well, I guess the brainwashing is complete. People can become radicalized. And how do people become radicalized? Because when they see the results of capitalism in their lives, that's pretty much how people become radicalized. When they see that exploitation and disenfranchisement, you know, by people. But yeah, so how long have I been talking? Almost an hour and a half. I think I'm going to leave it there because the thing is that I I seriously think that people basically telling these capitalists to take their low wages and shove it is an amazing thing. It makes me happy to see that. I just want us to go further. I just want us to go, you know what? You can take that low wage and shove it. Oh, by the way, your business is ours. It's ours now. No, 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 no. It's ours. You made enough money off of our backs. No, we're taking it. You made your money. It's ours now. You can go. Bye bye. Can't sit here and tell me somebody that's made billions and billions and billions of dollars. And then you suddenly how that, well, if you guys want to make this into a co-op, you guys got to buy me out. Like, no, you've been bought out already by labor. Bye bye. Go. Before something else bad happens. Go. Live on an island that you bought. Take your yachts with you. We don't need them. Because guess what? You extracted so much out of us already. That's payment enough. Way more than enough. You have enough money to last you thousands of lifetimes. Yeah, yeah. Because the thing is, people want to go, oh, but they invested their money. We invest our lives. We invest our blood, sweat, and tears. I like to say, don't let the door hit you where I could have kicked you. Make them yachts into some floating communes. So yeah, I'm just exhausted. Aren't you exhausted? Aren't you exhausted of always having to compete with your fellow man and woman and person in order to live, in order to survive? Aren't you exhausted having to constantly live for the weekend? Like, look, in other countries, they give you 2 hours off. They literally shut the town down in other countries so that you can spend time with your family and live. You're supposed to work to live, not live to work. if you live to work, then what is another word for that? Slavery. And don't you dare come at me in the comments going, oh, well, if they're so enslaved, then, they're volunteering to work for that person, blah, blah, blah. No. Because you're literally putting them in a position where they have no choice but to work for you and your slavery ass wages. You're putting in a position of either work for me for peanuts or starve and go homeless. You're like, well, you can always get an education. Oh, yeah, get an education and go into extreme debt for that education and then get a job and then they pay you peanuts because the system is saturated with degrees now. What's next? Come on. Throw them at me. Because guess what? Unless you own your own means of production, that ain't happening. No. They're like, all you need to do is invest. With what money? Food has gotten more expensive. Anybody who eats meat, when non-vegetarians and non-vegans, have you been to the grocery store lately? Even people who are vegans and vegetarians. How's your food bill? Have you guys seen the price of gas lately? What's about the price of what is the price of childcare? You can't live in this country. And people are realizing that. And they're at the point where they're like, I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And anytime a worker says, I'm just going to fold my hands and watch you squirm until I get I need in order to thrive, they got my support. I want to see a lot of this going on around the United States. I can't wait to see it. I want this to be the new rebellion. Just like this. If you want to make it even harder, put your feet up too. This is one of the reasons why I also think that mutual aid is very important. Because in order for people to do this, they need mutual aid in order for it to happen. So people like, Roman is Tour for the Poor, CJ and his Mutual Aid Forever, Freedom Fighters DC, go to mutualaidhub.org. Different resources like that, they're perfect for that because they help survive so that they can fold their hands, fold their arms, and say, nope, we're not lifting a finger until we get what we are owed, until we get what we are entitled to. And that's that. Do with that. So, I hope y'all enjoyed the stream. I know I typically don't stream at this time, at this hour, on this day, but at the same time, I was just like, you know what? I actually want to do this at this hour. And because I wanted to have a little discussion with y'all, see y'all, the beautiful people in the chat, and as well talk about an interesting subject that needs to be talked about. Because the thing is that a lot of people just do not make their sense like should because, well, they are brainwashed into thinking that this is as good as it gets. And guess what? It's not as good as it gets. You actually can do better, and you actually can better. So I'm here to help put a fire underneath you and say, y'all can do better. You can have better. Because guess what? You deserve it. I hope this is a labor based on trade unions. I hope this is. And if it is, bring it on in, baby. Because people need better. People deserve better by virtue of them being human beings. So, yeah. Now, just once again, I like to, thank everybody for the support, on my coffee page right here on the Chiron there down below. And if you'd like to, you guys can go to coffee.com/Jaybefaunt as down below as well. The link is also in the description, as well as some of my personal links to like my PayPal, my Cash App, and all that other stuff, whatever. Also, please be mindful of when you go into establishments and you're encountering workers. Please treat them well because they're already under the thumb of their employer. And I'm not saying accept, bad service. No, don't accept that. No. But see them as your equal and see them as someone who is just trying to make their way through life, and try to have as much empathy and kindness for them as you would want yourself. Also, if you're ordering food or something like that, don't go out to eat unless you plan on tipping the regular amount, which is, I guess, United States is 20%. Don't go out. If you don't have that, then don't go. Just don't. Just go to the grocery store and cook your own food. Because the thing is that a lot of these people, they get skipped out on all the time, and they deserve that. So try to be good to people, especially in the service industry. People who are in retail too, because I used to be in retail. I know what that's like. But I just want to say that, I'm deeply humbled that you all are watching. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to everybody in the chat. You all are brilliant. You guys teach me every single day. And I deeply appreciate and love all of you. Please make sure to drink plenty of water. Get all that cleansing water throughout your system, right? And also, like I always say, I want you guys to leave the world better than you found it. Even if you can't improve the entire world, just improve somebody's world. And smoke them if you got them. Smoke them if you got them. And put on a happy face. Maybe singing a song. Put on a happy face. And say goodbye or see you later. But put on a happy